Are you a dropshipper who's fulfilling from China to the US and heard about or experienced a lot of USPS issues? And if you are, you're probably wondering, what does that actually mean for dropshipping? Hi everyone, this is Dayu from EcommOps. Today I'm going to talk about a topic that has been asked a lot of me, is what is going on with the USPS? Is it in trouble? And how does this actually affect US fulfillment from China if you're a dropshipper? Alright, so today we're going to go over a little bit about the history of USPS and why it's so critical for US package delivery, even from China. We're going to talk about the current situation right now and some of the near-term risks. We're going to talk about the current impact that we are seeing right now and some thoughts for the future as well. If you want to continue following this topic, or you want to just have more free content about operations and logistics from China, please join our group, which I'll link below, for more great content like this. All right, so let's start with why is the USPS so critical for US package delivery. The USPS, first of all, is a very old organization. It was founded even before the United States itself, and it was actually really highly respected always. Here's their unofficial motto: neither snow nor rain nor heat nor gloom of night stays these couriers from the swift completion of their appointed rounds. Now, that's a very, very great mission that they have, and they've always been very, very respected. And at its core, it's actually very different than other private couriers out there like UPS or FedEx. So the USPS is sort of a government agency, but it's not entirely run like a business, which we'll talk about. That's what's kind of causing the issue. But it's mandated by the government to deliver to all US addresses. Private companies are, publicly traded. They operate like profitable businesses, and they're really not required to serve all business addresses if they don't need to, or it's not cost effective. And primarily because of the mandate of the USPS to deliver to all US locations, all at the same cost within the same zone, this means that the USPS cannot be replaced, or at least not replaced easily. It's not an easy situation where it says that if the USPS goes down, then FedEx, UPS will just take over. It's not like that. Actually, a lot of last mile delivery to more remote or rural areas, even if you send it by FedEx or UPS, they still use USPS to deliver because it's simply not profitable for UPS, for example, or FedEx to deliver to these locations. So essentially, if the USPS goes down, at least in terms of short term, there's going to be huge disruptions in deliveries to a lot of locations in the US. All right, so let's talk about the current situation and some near-term risks. At the very core of it, to be completely honest, a lot of it was because of Trump. So Trump has been on a mission against the USPS. So there's two main reasons for that. The first reason is that Trump really dislikes Amazon. And Amazon has a huge contract with the USPS, and he thinks that that's not fair. However, later we'll talk a little bit more about that's not true. The second reason is because he is really strongly against mail-in voting for elections that are coming up in November. Now, I don't want to get into the nuances here, so look that up online if you like as well. And as part of his actions, he appointed Dayu as the Postmaster General, who is the head of the USPS, and he was a longtime Republican donor, and a lot of people are saying that he appointed Dayu sort of as an effort to potentially sabotage or weaken the USPS. Now, the current situation with the USPS financially is extremely dire. So there has been a huge decline in first-class mail volume, so like literal mail, over the last decade. And there was a requirement in 2006 for them to actually fund a ridiculously large pension plan. And the government, influenced by Trump, also rejected a $75 billion bailout to bail them out. And there was very little tax money support. So this is actually where it's kind of a weird situation where they're kind of a government agency, but also not really, because they also have a budget and they're not getting real government support, at least financially. Now, at one point, they were $160 billion in debt, and they were predicted to go bankrupt by September 2020. Now, it's the end of August 2020 right now, so obviously that date is coming up, but that date is actually not going to be September for a reason I'll talk about a little bit later. Now, and so this guy, Dayu, that I just talked about, the new Postmaster General, he announced a lot of new measures that had huge impacts on USPS efficiency over the last month or so. So he canceled a lot of overtime, a lot of extra truck runs. He removed sorting machines, and just like all these things didn't really make too much sense at a time where package volume was actually going up. So obviously these cost-cutting measures already had some impact on the efficiency, especially with mail. And the concern is that they're going to continue to have inefficiencies as we go through the rest of the year. Now, DeJoy faced really high backlash for these actions. So he did announce on August 18th that he was going to halt these measures, but still it's not completely clear what is going to happen. So there is some risk still. And the other thing is, if you're not a US citizen, you might not know this, but US elections, presidential elections are coming up in November. And because of COVID, there's going to be expectedly a huge number of mail-in ballots for voting as opposed to going to the polls, which means that this is going to expect it to hugely increase USPS volume. And on the downside as well, there's chances that DeJoy, the postmaster, is also going to continue to limit delivery speed and efficiency. So how is this impacting US shipping generally? So USPS mail and package delivery, first class packages at least, have been affected. So this is actually a Twitter thread from a seller that's actually in the US. So they were even saying that even in the US, they were seeing some significant delays on 5 to 10% of their packages. So this is actually in the US. Now, thankfully for our service, for our clients, we have not seen significant delays caused by this. Now, everything is a little bit slower now because of COVID, just because of general under-resourcing at USPS in general, but it's actually not too bad right now. Here's a sample of our tracking numbers using UNexpress Express services. So as you guys see, there's a 4-day in there, there's a couple of 6 days, there's 5-day, 10-day. Now, there is one in here that took 16 days. Now, if you actually click into here, you will actually see that this was actually stuck with USPS for about a week or so before it started moving. So this is the current situation. I mean, it's not terrible because, kind of like the previous Twitter post as well, she was saying that, okay, 5 to 10% are seeing more extreme delays. And this is actually what we're seeing from China to US fulfillment as well. Some of it is actually still quite fast now, but some of it is going to get stuck for a while. So I just say that most of China shipping is actually still going to be okay, especially the express lines. That being said, I think that during this time, you should always have an idea that there are going to be 5-10% of packages that are going to be stuck with USPS sometimes. What happens a lot with USPS is that a lot of the time they move quite fine, but the problem is that when they are under-resourced, when they're cutting overtime, you're going to have just random backlogs along the system, whether you use US fulfillment or China fulfillment. So what happens is that most of your packages are probably going to be fine. However, you're going to have a handful that are going to get stuck somewhere and it's going to take longer to get there. The other important thing to note here is that if you are actually fulfilling from China, you really want to use a special line like UNexpress. Ideally, the express services, but even the regular battery line are quite okay because they actually use a higher version of USPS. The express services, for example, they actually use USPS Priority. Now, USPS Priority is a faster service, and it's really not affected as much by the other services like first class. If you're using packet, for example, or some other kind of cheaper special lines, you're not going to be able to get these kind of speeds because they're going to be really affected because they might be using first class mail that is cheaper but much less consistent. All right, so now let's talk about our own thoughts for the future, what this means coming up. Now, so I think it's still very, very possible that everything does return to normal, but even if it does, you have COVID issues, so it might go back to normal, but I think that likely it might be one of these three cases. The first case is that if things remain the same. Now, what I mean by remain the same is that it doesn't get better. So USPS is still under-resourced, but maybe DeJoy, the postmaster, does take back some of the cost-cutting measures and doesn't get worse from here. Now, I think that USPS delays are going to continue because of just simple under-resourcing. And this is going to add, like a day, couple days, maybe 5 days to delivery from China. But honestly speaking, if you think about that, that's actually not that bad, especially if you're good at communicating with your customers and setting the right expectations. Because trust me, like I said, even US fulfillment is seeing delays. I've seen examples of US fulfillment that take 2 weeks, where Express actually just take 5 days or 9 days. So it's suffering everywhere. Everyone in the US actually knows it. Your customers are going to understand that there are going to be USPS issues. Now, if the financial situation worsens and there's nothing that is done about it, then I think that there is a chance that USPS might increase shipping prices to compensate for the loss. And then finally, this is the worst case. If the USPS declares bankruptcy, let's not think about that, because that is really bad, because everything is going to be completely disrupted. Like I said, UPS, FedEx, they all use USPS as last mile for some cases, which means that there's going to be a huge short-term disruption, and whatever is left, the price is going to skyrocket, because you do not want private companies, well, not public profit-driven companies like UPS and FedEx to completely drive the prices of shipping. It's all going to go up. Now, so this all might sound all bad and kind of doom and gloom for the USPS, especially mail, but one generally positive thing is that this kind of goes back to the point around Trump thinking that Amazon is the enemy because they have a contract with the USPS, but actually during this period, package deliveries are the only major profitable segment of USPS. And actually, remember how I said that they were expected to go bankrupt by September 2020? So literally in weeks from now. The reason why that didn't happen was because e-commerce package volume shot up, and they were very profitable for the USPS. So just because of that, with no additional funding, they were actually able to extend their budget until April 2021. Now, if you pay attention to the last paragraph here, the Postal Service actually projects that, okay, it will run out of money by April 2021 if packages return to pre-pandemic levels. But they can last until October 2021 if packages stays at 15% above pre-pandemic levels. So this is a very clear indication that package volume recently, even though it's been backlogged, it's been keeping the USPS alive. So why is this good? Because at the end of the day, no matter what the government does, business-wise, financial-wise, it literally makes no sense to torpedo or sabotage package volume. So this is where I have a lot of confidence that I think the delays are going to continue, but I don't think they're going to get much worse. I don't think that US dropshipping from China is just going to completely collapse, because basically e-commerce package volume and the explosion due to COVID has been the only thing that's been keeping the USPS alive. And I think that they're going to realize that financially and not just completely disrupt it. And one additional piece of positive news to look forward to is that the US elections are on November 3rd. Now, most likely during that period, in the month or so before November 3rd, you're probably going to see a lot of backlog, a lot of inefficiencies with the mail service. But again, everyone in the US realizes this is happening, so it'll be easier to communicate with customers accordingly. Now, don't forget, Q4, the fourth quarter, is the most important sales season of the year, but really the peak sales season doesn't really start until actually early to mid-November, and it continues through December. So the good news here is that the mail-in voting is going to stop before peak season really starts, and my personal hope is that they are actually going to staff more people heading into elections, and then normally speaking, USPS USPS actually expands its staff during Q4 anyways. So hopefully right after the elections are over, the USPS actually gets a lot more efficient, and who knows, maybe actually returns to its previous efficiency. And the second point here, so I don't want to get political on this channel, but I think it's almost an objective fact that if a new election result, if Trump does not get voted into office again, this actually might be able to solve the problem once and for all. It's going to allow the government to provide much more needed funding for the USPS. And more generally speaking, Trump has always been very against China and China trade, and there's been a trade war going on. So I think that very different policies with the next president is going to really help China and U.S. relations, and therefore I think it could be a really big benefit long term and first step to recovery back to normal for U.S. from China dropshipping. All right, everyone, hope that was helpful. If you liked this video, really appreciate a like, subscribe, turn on notifications so you can see more videos like this in the future. We are a premium dropshipping fulfillment agency. If you have steady orders, check us out. I'll put the link below. And finally, if you want more free content like this, join our Facebook group where we're constantly posting more news and more discussions around operations in China logistics. But thank you guys for watching. Until next time, this is Dayu from EcommOps. See you guys later.